The auction grounds pulsed with restless energy, boots scuffing against the dry dirt, impatient voices bartering over bids, the rhythmic clatter of hooves shifting in crowded pens. Dust hung thick in the summer heat, swirling around the chaos of buyers assessing potential horses. Yet amid the towering stallions and elegant mares, a small, battered pony stood alone. She was different, thin and scarred. Her black and white coat was marred with patches of dried mud, her tangled mane hanging over wary eyes that darted at every movement. The other horses carried themselves with controlled energy, heads high, ears alert. But this one looked like she had already decided that humans meant only pain. Lily watched from the back of the crowd, her pulse hammering in her ears. The auctioneer barely gave the pony a glance before adjusting his hat. His voice rang out, rough and uninterested. "All right, folks, last one of the day. Not much to say. Wild, skittish, no history of riding, probably better suited as a pasture companion or, well, you know." He didn't finish his sentence, but Lily knew exactly what he meant. A horse that couldn't be ridden had no use to most people. A sharp pain twisted in her chest. The pony shifted her weight, hooves stamping nervously as the noise around her grew louder. Someone flicked a rope behind her, urging her to move, but she only flinched, her muscles locking up in fear rather than compliance. "She's useless," a man muttered. "Probably been mistreated," another said. "Not worth the trouble." Lily's hands clenched into fists. She knew that feeling all too well. The auctioneer sighed, already moving on. "All right, starting bid, $100. Silence. He tried again. 50? Nothing. A chuckle rippled through the crowd. Lily swallowed hard. She could feel the weight of her mother's gaze beside her, silent but knowing. She hesitated. Was she really about to do this? The pony flicked her ears, sensing something in the air, her gaze locking onto Lily's just for a fleeting second. A small, desperate spark. Lily didn't think. Her hand shot up. $5! A stunned silence spread through the auction. Someone coughed. A rancher near the front let out a breath of laughter. "Kid's got guts," someone muttered. The auctioneer gave her a long, unreadable look. Then he shrugged. "Sold." The gavel slammed down. And just like that, Storm was hers. The old wooden barn groaned as a cold wind whispered through the cracks. The air smelled of hay and damp wood, mixed with the sharp tang of fear radiating off the small pony pressed into the farthest corner of her stall. Lily sat outside the bars, her knees pulled to her chest, watching. For 2 whole days, Storm had refused to let anyone near her. She didn't eat much, didn't drink unless she was alone. Any attempt to approach her resulted in flattened ears and sharp, warning snorts. Her mother had sighed that morning, brushing dust from her jeans. "Lily, honey, not every horse can be fixed. Some are too broken." Lily had heard the same words before. She wasn't about to believe them now. She knew what it was like to keep people at a distance. She knew what it meant to brace for hurt, to flinch at kindness because it always came with conditions. Storm wasn't just a wild pony. She was a reflection. And if Lily could help her, if she could make her feel safe just once, maybe that meant she wasn't as broken as she thought either. That night, she didn't bring food. She didn't bring a halter or a rope. She just sat outside the stall, cross-legged in the hay, and began to talk. Her voice was barely above a whisper, soft enough that even the restless barn animals seemed to quiet. She told Storm about the things she never said aloud, about her dad leaving, about how the house felt too empty now, about how she hated feeling like she was just waiting for things to get worse. Storm didn't move, but for the first time she listened, and when Lily looked up, she found the pony watching her, her wild eyes holding something different. It wasn't trust, not yet, but it wasn't fear either. The next morning, Lily tried something new. She entered the stall but didn't move towards Storm. Instead, she sat near the door, close enough to be seen but not close enough to push. And then she waited. Minutes passed, then an hour. Lily felt the stiffness in her back, the ache in her legs, but she didn't leave. Storm shifted, uneasy. Her ears twitched. Then, hesitantly, she took a step forward. Lily didn't breathe. Another step. Storm's nostrils flared, testing the air. And then, her muzzle brushed Lily's outstretched palm. A rush of warmth spread through her chest, and she bit back the overwhelming emotion, threatening to spill over. Storm had chosen to touch her. Not because she was forced, because she wanted to. Lily exhaled shakily, barely daring to move as she let her fingers ghost lightly over Storm's muzzle. The moment was fragile, hanging between them like spun glass. Then, just as quickly as it had begun, it was over. Storm snorted sharply, stepping back, shaking herself off as if suddenly remembering that she wasn't supposed to trust anyone. But Lily didn't feel disappointed, because trust was never won in a single moment. It was built. And today, for the first time, they had laid the first stone. The storm hit without warning. One moment, the sky was calm, the air still with the thick scent of summer grass. The next, dark clouds had swallowed the sun, rolling in with a weight that pressed against Lily's skin. The wind howled through the trees, rattling the barn doors. Horses whinnied nervously, shifting in their stalls. And then, a deafening crack of thunder. Lily jolted awake, heart hammering. The frantic screams of animals filled the air, but one sound cut through it all. A panicked, desperate whinny. Storm. Lily barely had time to register before another crash shook the barn. This time, the unmistakable splintering of wood. Storm had broken through her stall. By the time Lily reached the doorway, the pony was gone. Fear slammed into her chest. The storm was brutal, rain lashing down in thick sheets, turning the world into a blur of motion and sound. The pastures stretched out into darkness, the distant fence barely visible through the downpour. She couldn't lose her. Barefoot, lungs burning, Lily ran. She didn't feel the rain soaking her clothes, didn't hear her mother's voice screaming her name from the barn. All she could hear was the wild pounding of her heart. Then, a flash of lightning illuminated the night, and she saw her. Storm stood at the edge of the swollen creek, her whole body trembling, hooves sinking into the mud. Lily felt ice flood her veins. If she moved forward, she'd be swept away. Storm tossed her head, eyes wide with terror, the howling wind making her movements frantic. Lily swallowed hard, forcing her own fear down. She had to reach her, and so she did the only thing she could, she whispered, the same way she had in the barn. Storm, I'm here. I won't let anything happen to you. The pony's ears flicked back. Lily took a step closer, then another, until she was standing right in front of her. Lightning split the sky, Storm flinched, but she didn't bolt. Lily reached out, fingers trembling. Storm exhaled, then she pressed her muzzle into Lily's hand. And this time, she didn't pull away. She leaned in, and together they walked home. Lily didn't realize how cold she was until she stumbled back into the barn, Storm's warm body pressed against her side. Her fingers were trembling, her breath ragged, and her clothes clung to her skin, soaked through from the rain. Her mother stood just inside the doorway, her face pale with fear. Lily! She rushed forward, wrapping her arms tightly around her daughter, but Lily barely registered the embrace. All she could feel was Storm's breath against her shoulder, the slight tremble still running through the pony's muscles. She was scared, Lily whispered, barely able to speak past the lump in her throat. Her mother pulled back, gripping her arms. And so was I. You ran out into a storm, barefoot. You could have been hurt or lost, or... Her voice cracked, and she took a shuddering breath before shaking her head. Lily, you can't. But Lily wasn't listening. She turned back to Storm, her heart swelling as she realized something. The pony wasn't pulling away. Even with the storm still raging outside, with the wind howling through the gaps in the barn walls, Storm stood beside her, pressed close, trusting her. The realization sent a fresh wave of emotion crashing over Lily. She swallowed hard, her throat tightening. I had to go, she said softly. She needed me. Her mother exhaled, rubbing her temples. Lily, honey, I know you care about her, but... Storm shifted, her nose nudging against Lily's arm. It wasn't much, just a small touch, but it meant everything. Her mother saw it too. The fight in her posture slowly faded, replaced with something else, something softer. After a long moment, she let out a sigh. Get her dried off, she murmured, and you too. We'll talk in the morning. Lily nodded, barely able to contain the bubbling warmth spreading in her chest. The night had been terrifying, but it had changed everything. By morning, the storm had passed, leaving the world damp and fresh. Sunlight streamed through the barn doors, glistening on the damp hay. Lily woke early, slipping out of bed before her mother could remind her to rest. She knew she should have been exhausted, but excitement buzzed beneath her skin. She had to see Storm. She found the pony standing quietly in her stall, head lowered as she chewed on a pile of fresh hay. When Lily stepped closer, Storm's ears flicked back, but she didn't move away. Lily hesitated, holding her breath. Then slowly she reached out and brushed her fingers along the pony's muzzle. Warmth, softness, acceptance. Lily exhaled, a smile breaking across her face. "Good morning, girl." Storm's dark eyes met hers, and for the first time there was no fear, no hesitation, only quiet trust. The moment was shattered when a voice rang from behind her. "Well, I'll be damned." Lily turned sharply to see Mr. Thompson, the old rancher who lived a few miles away, standing in the barn doorway. He leaned against the post, his weathered hands gripping the brim of his hat. "Didn't think I'd see the day," he mused, whistling low. "That pony's got more fight in her than a rattlesnake in a feed bag. Didn't let a soul near her when she came through auction." Lily squared her shoulders, pride bubbling in her chest. She just needed someone to listen. Mr. Thompson chuckled, shaking his head. "That so?" He studied her for a long moment before nodding toward the pony. "Think she's got it in her to be ridden?" Lily hesitated. Storm was calm now, trusting even. But riding? That was a whole different level. "I don't know," she admitted, "but I think we can try." Mr. Thompson scratched his chin, clearly amused. "Well, I'd pay good money to see that." Lily didn't answer, because in her heart she already knew. This wasn't about proving something to anyone else. It was about proving something to Storm, and to herself. The first attempt was cautious. Lily didn't saddle Storm, didn't even try to mount her. Instead, she led her to the open field behind the barn, where the grass was soft beneath their feet and the wind carried the scent of wildflowers. She let Storm graze, walking beside her, never forcing anything. She spoke in quiet murmurs, telling the pony about her fears, her dreams, her hopes. Storm listened. And then, after an hour, Lily tried something new. She placed her hands on Storm's back. The pony flinched. Lily froze. Her fingers barely touched the coarse hair, waiting. Storm's breathing was quick, nostrils flaring, but she didn't bolt. Lily withdrew her hand. "It's okay." Storm's ears twitched. She turned her head slightly, nostrils flaring as she sniffed at Lily's hand. Testing, trusting. Lily's heart swelled. They weren't there yet, but they were closer, and that was enough. Days passed, then weeks. Lily worked with Storm every morning and every evening. She spent hours just being near her, letting her get used to her presence. Then she tried again. This time, when she placed her hands on Storm's back, the pony didn't flinch. When she pressed a little more weight, Storm shifted, uncertain, but she didn't move away. Lily took it slow, step by step. One day she draped a blanket over Storm's back. The next, she introduced a light saddle. Each time she gave Storm the choice. She never forced, never pushed too hard. And then, the moment came. Lily stood in the field, one foot in the stirrup, her heart pounded. Storm's ears flicked back. "I won't hurt you," Lily whispered. "I promise." Storm let out a long breath, and for the first time she didn't step away. Lily swung her leg over, settling lightly onto the saddle. The world seemed to hold its breath. Then, Storm took one tentative step forward, then another. Lily could hardly believe it. She pressed a hand against Storm's neck, her chest swelling with something indescribable. Storm had chosen this. She had chosen her. And together they rode into the golden light of morning. Lily never knew exactly when the change happened, when Storm stopped being just a wild pony and became something more. A friend, a partner, a part of her. But one evening, as they galloped across the open field, the wind rushing past them and the world stretching out before them, Lily realized something. Storm wasn't just free, she was finally home. And so was she. Lily didn't stop smiling for the rest of the day. Even as she finished her evening chores, brushing down Storm in the quiet comfort of the barn, she couldn't shake the warmth in her chest. The ride had been short, barely more than a slow walk across the field, but it had been real. Storm had trusted her, and that meant everything. Lily leaned against the stall door, watching as Storm lazily flicked her tail, her eyes half closed in contentment. "I told you we could do it," she whispered. Storm flicked an ear, then turned her head, nudging Lily's arm with her velvety muzzle. Lily laughed softly, reaching up to scratch behind the pony's ears. "We're going to go even farther next time," she promised. "But only if you're ready." Storm exhaled, a deep, slow sound that felt almost like an agreement. Lily spent the next few weeks taking everything one step at a time. She didn't rush, didn't push. She learned to read Storm's body language in a way she never had before. How her ears would flick forward when she was curious, how the tension in her muscles would shift when she was unsure, how she always hesitated for just a second before deciding whether to trust. Lily made sure the answer was always yes. Each ride was a little longer, a little smoother. They moved from walking to trotting, then to a slow, controlled canter. And then, one morning, Storm broke into a gallop. Lily barely had time to react before they were flying across the field, the wind whipping through her hair, the ground a blur beneath them. She could feel the strength in every stride, the power of Storm's muscles beneath her. But more than anything, she could feel freedom. Not just hers. Storm's too. She wasn't running from something, she was running with her. For the first time since she had come to the farm, Storm wasn't a wild pony who had been abandoned, afraid, and lost. She was alive, and Lily had never felt more at home. That evening, as Lily walked Storm back to the barn, she found her mother waiting at the door. Lily tensed instinctively, bracing for another lecture, but her mother just folded her arms, watching as Storm nuzzled against Lily's shoulder. "You've done something incredible with her," she admitted. Lily blinked, startled. You think so?" Her mother exhaled, shaking her head. "Lily, I thought this pony was going to break your heart." Lily swallowed. "She almost did." Her mother studied her for a long moment. "But you didn't give up." Lily glanced at Storm, who stood calmly beside her. "No," she murmured, "I didn't." For a moment there was silence between them. Then her mother sighed. "Well, I suppose if you're serious about keeping her, we should start making some proper arrangements." Lily's heart stopped. She stared. "Wait, really?" Her mother's lips twitched. "Really?" A squeal burst from Lily's throat before she could stop it. She threw her arms around Storm's neck, hugging her tightly. Storm huffed in surprise, but didn't pull away. Her mother chuckled. "You're going to have to take responsibility for her, though. That means her feed, her training, her care." "I will," Lily said quickly. "I swear I will." Her mother smiled, shaking her head. "I believe you." Lily turned back to Storm, pressing her forehead against the ponies. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. "You're mine." Storm exhaled, and just for a second, Lily swore she saw something in her dark eyes. Something warm, something happy, and she knew. Storm had finally found home. The weeks that followed were some of the happiest of Lily's life. She worked harder than she ever had before, learning how to properly care for Storm, managing her training, balancing chores with school. She spent every free moment at the barn, and Storm greeted her with an eager nicker each time, as if she had been waiting for her. Lily's world had always felt too small, too lonely, but now she had her. Storm wasn't just her pony, she was her best friend, and Lily was determined to give her the life she deserved. But then, something changed. It started subtly. One afternoon, as Lily led Storm out to the field, the pony hesitated. Her ears flicked back, her nostrils flared. She seemed unsettled. Lily frowned. "What's wrong, girl?" Storm didn't answer, of course, but as they stepped into the open space, Lily felt it too. A presence. She turned sharply, just in time to see a truck pulling into the driveway. A man stepped out, tall, broad-shouldered, a weathered cowboy hat pulled low over his face. Lily's stomach twisted. Something about him felt wrong. Her mother stepped onto the porch, crossing her arms. "Mr. Parker," she said stiffly. Lily froze. She knew that name. The man who had owned Storm before the auction. Storm snorted, ears pinning back, her muscles tensing beneath Lily's hands. She was afraid. Lily clenched her jaw, stepping in front of her protectively. "What do you want?" her mother asked. Parker didn't look at her. His gaze was locked on Storm. "That's my pony," he said. Lily's blood ran cold. Lily's fingers tightened around Storm's lead rope. Her heart pounded so loudly she could barely hear anything else. No, this wasn't happening. Storm was hers. They had come too far. She had fought too hard. But the man, Parker, stood there like a storm rolling in, claiming what had never been his to begin with. Her mother's stance didn't falter. "That pony was abandoned," she said, her voice cool and firm. "She was sold at auction." Parker snorted. She was never meant to be there. He took a step closer, his boots crunching against the gravel. "You don't understand. That's my stock. I let her loose temporarily. Someone must have taken her to auction before I could get her back. Lily's breath caught. You let her loose? She echoed, disbelief laced with anger. Parker's gaze flicked to her. Didn't see a reason to keep a pony that wouldn't break. The words hit like a slap. Storm flinched beside her. Lily felt her pony's fear, the tension in her muscles, the way her breath quickened. She remembered how Storm had flinched from ropes, how she had refused to let anyone near her, how every touch had sent her running at first. This man, he had done something to her. Lily stepped in front of Storm, putting herself between them. You don't deserve her. Parker raised an eyebrow, his lips curling into something that wasn't quite a smirk. Kid, you don't make that decision. Lily's mother stepped forward. You abandoned her. You never reported a missing pony, never put out a claim. That pony was sold fairly. We paid for her. She's not yours anymore. His expression darkened. That's still my brand on her shoulder. Lily hadn't noticed it at first, not really. But beneath the thick growing coat of winter fur, a faded scar lay on Storm's shoulder. A brand, burned deep into her skin long ago. A claim, a mark that she had once been his property. Lily's stomach turned. She knew the law. If Parker had proof that Storm was his, really his, he could take her back. Just like that. As if everything they had built, everything they had become, meant nothing. Lily shook her head. No, she wouldn't let that happen. Storm wasn't property. She was family. Parker's gaze swept over Lily, then landed on Storm again. You want to keep her? His voice was almost mocking. She's not worth the trouble. Lily swallowed the anger bubbling inside her. Then why are you here? Parker didn't answer right away. His silence was loud enough. Lily knew. He hadn't come back because he cared. He had come back because he had seen her ride Storm, because someone had told him about the untamed pony that was now moving like a champion. Storm was valuable now, and that made Lily sick. Her mother's voice was ice. If you want to dispute this, take it up with the auction board. But right now, you need to leave. Parker's jaw clenched. For a moment, he looked like he might argue. Then he spat onto the ground and turned. You'll regret keeping her, he muttered before walking back to his truck. Lily watched as the engine roared to life, the truck's tires kicking up dust as it pulled away. She didn't move, didn't breathe. Not until he was gone. Then she collapsed into Storm's side, gripping her tightly, as tears burned in her eyes. Storm snorted softly, pressing her muzzle into Lily's shoulder. Lily squeezed her eyes shut. She had almost lost her. And the worst part, she knew Parker wasn't done. That night, Lily couldn't sleep. She tossed and turned, her mind spinning with everything Parker had said. Storm had been his. He had let her loose. She had been nothing to him. But now that she had worth, he wanted her back. Lily clenched her fists beneath her blanket. Storm wasn't a thing to be owned and discarded when it suited someone. She was her own soul, her own spirit, and Lily would never let Parker take that from her again. She sat up, staring out the window at the barn. The moonlight spilled across the field, silver against the grass. Her heart ached. She couldn't shake the feeling in her gut. Parker wasn't the kind of man to just give up. What if he came back? What if he tried to take her? The thought sent a wave of panic through Lily's chest. She had to protect her. Without thinking, she threw off the blankets and padded barefoot across the floor. She slipped on her boots, grabbed a flashlight, and crept outside. The night air was cold against her skin, but she barely felt it. Storm's stall door was locked. Lily checked it twice, pulling on it just to make sure. Storm lifted her head, blinking sleepily. Lily stepped inside, burying her face in her pony's neck. I won't let him take you, she whispered fiercely. I swear it. Storm let out a soft, warm breath against Lily's cheek. Lily stayed with her for a long time, curled up in the straw beside her, listening to the steady rhythm of Storm's breathing. She didn't know what would happen next, but one thing was certain. She wasn't backing down. Not now. Not ever. Lily barely slept. Even as dawn painted the horizon in soft pinks and oranges, her mind wouldn't stop racing. She had a feeling, a certainty, that Parker wasn't done. He had looked at Storm like she was a thing, something he had lost and wanted back, not a living being with thoughts, emotions, and a soul. Her mother's words replayed in her head. If you want to dispute this, take it up with the auction board. But that meant waiting, and Lily didn't trust Parker to wait. Her body ached from sleeping on the barn floor, but she ignored it. She brushed the straw from her sweater and checked Storm's stall door again. Still locked. The barn was silent except for the soft shuffle of hooves, the rhythmic chewing of hay. Everything felt normal, but Lily knew better. By the time she walked into the kitchen, her mother was already at the table, a steaming mug of coffee in her hands. Her gaze immediately snapped to Lily. "You stayed in the barn, didn't you?" Lily hesitated, then nodded. Her mother sighed, rubbing her temples. "I get it, Lil, I do, but we can't let fear run our lives." Lily pulled out a chair and sat across from her. "I don't trust him, Mom. I don't either." Lily blinked. That wasn't the response she expected. Her mother set her mug down. "Men like Parker don't like losing, and he just lost." A chill ran down Lily's spine. "What do we do?" she whispered. Her mother met her gaze. "We prepare." That morning, they reinforced the barn. Her mother called a friend who worked in law enforcement, asking about their rights, making sure everything was airtight. Lily checked every stall door, every gate. She fixed anything that was loose. She made sure Storm's stall was the most secure of them all. Her father installed security cameras, small but effective, positioned around the barn and at the entrance of the property. "If he tries something," her father said, tightening the last screw, "we'll have proof." Lily felt a little safer, but she still wasn't sleeping in the house. For the next few nights, she stayed in the barn, wrapped in blankets, listening for any sound out of place. Storm trusted her now, and Lily would not betray that trust. It happened on the third night. Lily woke to a noise, a sharp metallic click. Her heart slammed into her ribs. The barn door. Someone was opening it. She didn't breathe, didn't move. A flashlight beam cut through the darkness, scanning the stalls. Lily's blood turned to ice. Parker. He was here. Storm's stall was locked, but that wouldn't stop him. Lily had seconds to act. Heart pounding, she reached for her phone, barely daring to breathe as she texted her mother 2 words, "He's here." Then, gripping the flashlight in her shaking fingers, she stood up. The second she turned the beam on him, Parker's head snapped toward her. For a long, tense moment, neither of them moved. Then slowly he smirked. Well, he murmured. "Didn't think you'd be in here." Lily's voice was stronger than she felt. "Get out." Parker chuckled, stepping closer. "Relax, kid, just checking on what's mine." "She's not yours." His smirk faded. "That's not your call." Lily's fingers tightened around her flashlight. "The cameras are recording you," she said, "and my mom's calling the cops." She had no idea if that was true, but Parker hesitated. And that was all she needed. Behind him, headlights cut through the darkness. A car engine rumbled up the driveway. Parker's jaw tensed. Lily's mother's voice cut through the night. "You have 10 seconds to get off this property before I have you arrested for trespassing." For a long, awful moment, Lily thought Parker might try something. Then he exhaled sharply. "This isn't over," he muttered. And then he was gone. The police took the footage from the security cameras. Parker had no excuse. He had broken onto private property. He never came back. Lily wasn't sure if it was because he knew the law was watching him now, or because he finally realized Storm wasn't his anymore. Storm had never been his. Because ownership, it wasn't about brands or papers, it was about trust. And trust was something Parker had never earned. Lily had. Months passed. Storm changed. She was still wild at heart, still spirited. But now, she trusted Lily completely. They rode together like they were one being, moving in perfect rhythm. And when they entered their first competition, the crowd watched in awe. Not because Storm was the fastest, not because she was the strongest, but because she listened. Because she moved with a kind of grace and connection that couldn't be taught, only earned. Lily leaned down, stroking Storm's mane as they finished their run. "You did it, girl," she whispered. "You're free." Storm tossed her head, her eyes bright, full of fire. And Lily knew. That freedom? They had found it together. Lily and Storm's journey reflects the power of trust and resilience. Too often in life, people believe that something belongs to them simply because they held it once. They think they have a right to take back what they threw away. But true belonging isn't about ownership. It's about care, effort, and mutual respect. Storm didn't become Lily's just because she bought her. She became Lily's because Lily earned her trust. This story also highlights the importance of standing up for what's right. Lily was small, but she fought for Storm. She didn't let fear win. And in the end, she proved that love and trust are stronger than force or intimidation. In today's world, there are so many situations where we see people trying to reclaim something they once discarded, whether it's relationships, opportunities, or even people they mistreated. But what matters isn't who owns something first. What matters is who truly cares. Just like Lily fought for Storm, we should fight for the things and the people we love, not with force, but with patience, trust, and an unshakable belief in what's right. What do you think about Lily and Storm's journey? Have you ever experienced a bond like theirs, where trust and patience overcame fear? Let me know in the comments. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful and emotional stories like this. Your support helps bring more inspiring tales to life. Let's celebrate the unbreakable connections between humans and animals together.